Welcome back, Vol fans. It's been a week off since we last saw you. We're here to break down Week 8 in college football. I'm Miles Collins. This is Cody McClure, and we're going to break down the UT Volunteers game and Alabama Crimson Tide that's happening this week in Tuscaloosa. When we last talked to you guys or saw you guys, it was Georgia weekend, and Tennessee going to that game may have been a slight underdog because of the way they've played all year. There's a little bit of optimism still left in the tank, though, with this Tennessee team that hasn't really produced to the level they should have this year. But Tennessee did come out with a win. They generally played Georgia pretty well at home, and Cody, they came away with a victory last week. What did you take away from that game?
Took away a lot of momentum from that game. They had to have that win. I think we knew that going into it all week long. That was huge for momentum because 3-3 going to Tuscaloosa is a lot better than 2-4 going to Tuscaloosa. So it was huge for momentum, huge for confidence, and I think it's really going to help Tennessee moving forward. Even if they lose the Alabama game this weekend, it's got to give them some confidence for the rest of the SEC East schedule.
I definitely agree. And with this game, the Georgia and Tennessee game, you saw a lot of good things from Tennessee. Like I said, they generally play Georgia pretty well at home, and that's what you saw again in that game. I did see a couple laps on the defense, and if you're being critical about that game, because Tennessee did squeak out a win. Granted, yes, you will take a win any way you can get it, and Tennessee did find a way to finally get that big win that Butch Jones desperately needed. But right there at the end of the game, Cody, I mean, there was a couple plays that Tennessee you saw. They could have easily been in overtime in that game. A drop pass away from Georgia right there at the very end of the game that would have scored a touchdown, put the game in overtime, and then maybe we're talking about a completely different scenario.
Sure, and I think the thing is, in that game, Tennessee finally got the breaks that the other teams have been getting over the last few weeks. It did take a drop pass by Georgia. It took a couple of blown play calls late in the game. It took a punt that bounced inside the 1 yard line. But Tennessee just got the ball to bounce their way a few times. And that's what you got to have to win games in the SEC.
Absolutely. And I mean, you can attribute some of that to the loud noise that was being brought to in that stadium. That stadium was as loud as it has been all year. I think probably as loud as you saw it since that Oklahoma game. And maybe that affected Georgia. Either way, you take the win. Tennessee's now had a week off to rest for a very good Alabama team going into Tuscaloosa. One of the best defenses, if not the best defense in the nation. Players you're looking for? What are you looking for into this game right here?
Alabama is playing really well right now. If I'm looking at some players on the Crimson Tide team, I'm looking at their defensive line and their linebackers because their front seven has been winning them games. So the way that they match up against Tennessee, an offensive line that's not spectacular, but it's not as bad as it was last year. The run blocking's been okay. That's the matchup for me in this game. Can Tennessee run the ball against Alabama's defense? Because here's the thing. Usually, that's not the case. Alabama's run D is going to be stingy. They're going to shut down any opposing run game, which means Tennessee's going to have to throw the ball. So on the other side of things, I'm watching Josh Dobbs. I'm watching the Tennessee wide receivers who have been rather underwhelming to this point in time. Alabama has a very good defense. They've got defensive backs that can stick on those receivers. So we'll see if they can get any separation. And one thing that Volunteer fans can take comfort in is that when Tennessee got down 24-3 to Georgia, they really opened up the playbook in the second half. They're going to have to do that again against Alabama to allow Josh Dobbs to throw the football.
Yeah, and one of the key moments in that Tennessee and Georgia game, you saw there was a big turnover right before halftime. They got Tennessee back in the game. It might take a turnover like that to get back in the game against Alabama, but it's Alabama defense. You can't really say enough about it. They outscored Texas A&M's offense last week alone with 3 pick sixes. So you got to look at that stat right there with Josh Dobbs not being able to throw the ball as well as you'd like to see him do. If there's one bright moment for this game with Tennessee and Alabama is that one of Josh Dobbs' best games he's had to date was in the second half of the Alabama game last season, where you saw a very, very good Tennessee team put a scare in Alabama. So if you can see a little bit of that this year, early on in the game with Tennessee this year, I think Tennessee might get a little confidence going into that if they can play as well as they did last year. But at the end of the day, this defense, it's extremely good, and you can't underestimate them at all.
It's good. They need a quick start is what they need. In that game last year, Miles, they got down 27-0 to Alabama. Amari Cooper was a one-man wrecking crew like he has been his whole career against Tennessee, really. Amari Cooper is gone, but Alabama's got a new guy outside in Calvin Ridley who's playing very well. Tennessee needs to get out to a fast start. They need to get some points on the board early and try to get the game to the fourth quarter.
Certainly agree. I mean, can Tennessee run the ball in this defense? That's going to be a big question because Tennessee's relied heavily on the run this year. Like we just said, that Josh Dobbs has not been able to pass the ball as well as you'd like to see him do. So can Tennessee establish that run against a very stout Alabama defense? That's going to be a big test early on in this game. You're going to be in a very hostile environment. Alabama hungry to not lose another game since they've already got that first loss. They do not want to lose another game, especially to keep their college football playoff hopes alive. So can Tennessee establish that run early? We'll find out, and then maybe work into a little bit of the passing game. How's Tennessee going to come out? Hopefully they've had a week off to prepare and get a good game plan together for this Alabama team, and we'll see. Predictions, what do you got?
I've got Alabama winning the game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. If one thing you pointed out was that Alabama's defense scored 3 touchdowns last week. Their offense was held to 20 against the A&M defense. It's not very good. They didn't really blow out the Arkansas with many points in that game. They scored 27 total, but the offense didn't really get going. Coker's been throwing some interceptions. Alabama's offense is not as good as it has been. But here's the thing going into this game. Alabama needs this win more than Tennessee does. They're still alive for the college football playoff. This is their last game before 2 weeks. They get to rest for 2 weeks before taking on LSU. So you know that they're going to be focused. You know that they're going to come in and try to dispatch Tennessee back to Knoxville. It's going to come down to Josh Dobbs in this game. The quarterback will play a huge part in it because Alabama's run defense, in my opinion, is going to be too stout up front. I don't think Jalen Hurd will be much of a factor. So I think it's going to rest on the shoulders of Josh Dobbs and the Tennessee wide receivers. And if it comes down to that, I just don't have confidence in the Vols. I think they'll give Alabama a game for a little while, but my final score, Crimson Tide 27-16 over Tennessee.
Yeah, for me, I think if Tennessee can get pressure on Coker early and put the game out of his hands, make them run the ball more, which is actually where they're pretty good with Derrick Henry, but you can't let them open up the passing game. If you keep them one-dimensional on offense, I think that really helps out the Tennessee defense because then you can load the box, keep pressure on Coker, and try and stop that run. And if Tennessee's offense can control the ball and take good care of the ball and not let that defense get big plays as they did against A&M, I think that definitely helps Tennessee as well. I, like you, I've got Alabama in this game. I think it's going to be somewhere around 31-24, actually. I don't think it's going to be a big blowout, like you said. I think this game could be closer than many people think. But, yeah, if Tennessee can protect the ball on offense, take care of it, try and limit that, the passing game from Alabama on defense, get pressure on Coker, that gives Tennessee the best chance, I believe, in this game. So, for this week, Week 8's preview, Cody McClure, I'm Alex Collins. That is our Tennessee and Alabama preview. We'll see you next week.